Sir, the oxygen level is bottoming out in Sector G. What do you want me to do about it?
Give these people air.
This is Atlan Internet Radio.
It's the Ranger Dave Show. This show is a celebration of sound, busting free from the rules of convention and mediocrity. From a mighty mountain somewhere on the west coast of North America, and broadcasting out to the world from within his humble lair, our fearless hero delivers a musical brew, sizzling up from his brain pan, as would a giant human jukebox. Ranger Dave strives to fill the world with healing vibes through selected tunology.
Assume the position, clock monkeys. This show is about time, and it's about time. Oh, once upon a time. Ahead of my time, maybe. I don't want to be behind the times. You see, time has many meanings. Sometimes time can last a long time, like when you're sick, or you're waiting for something, or something terrible's happening. Sometimes time slows down, then it speeds up. Like when you're on a roller coaster or you're having a really great time. You wonder where the time went. I think time is a little bit like money. The more you have of it, the less each little bit of it means. To a child, $1 is a lot of money. To an old man with a giant pension and lots of dough, $1's not much. Same with days. The older you get, the less each day seems to last. Yes, time's a funny thing. It seems malleable. Maybe it's a construct. Maybe it's an invention. Let's explore that, shall we? This is Ranger Dave.
We are considering the subject of time and the whole concept of the future. And the point of departure that I would like to suggest to you is that time is a social institution and not a physical reality. There is, in other words, no such thing as time in the natural world, the world of stars and waters and mountains and clouds and living organisms. There is such a thing as rhythm. Rhythm of tides, rhythm of biological processes. But time as such is a social institution. In the same way that language is, that number is, that concepts are, and all measurements, inches, meters, lines of latitude and longitude, all those things are social institutions or conventions. The word convention from the Latin convenire, to come together, to agree about something, to hold a convention, and thus, of course, in its deteriorated sense, when we say of something it's purely conventional, that is to say, you needn't take it seriously. Of course, are we going to take time seriously? That is the big question. And it depends what you mean. If you don't understand that time is a convention, of course you take it seriously. And you are driven by time. Time is money. Time is of the essence. And we do, don't we, live in a culture, or a complex of cultures in the Western world where we are literally driven by time. If you read a book like Jules Henry's marvelous work, Culture Against Man, he documents in the most extraordinary way to what an extent this particular culture is driven. So that even the psychologists have altered the old-fashioned word instincts, and now they call them drives. Because there's this feeling, you've got to make that deadline. There's something there you've got to get to. And people feel driven even when, supposing something's going to happen, you've got an appointment coming up. And some people find that in a strange way unsettling. They're so either eager to make this thing or so anxious about it that in between time they can't do anything else. They're incapacitated until it happens, until the blessed event or whatever it is occurs. But in the natural physical world there is rhythm and there is motion. And time then obviously is a way of measuring motion by comparing motion with some sort of constant. Now the constant in the question of time is a circle, marked out in 360 or 60 degrees. And that is time. We cause a hand, a pointer, to revolve around that circle at a regular speed, and that gives us a constant with which we compare all kinds of motions and rhythms. And so the clock is just like a ruler and is as abstract as a ruler. And must be taken just for that, which means in a way not seriously, you see. That doesn't mean, of course, that you say, well, from now on we're going to melt down all clocks and use them for something else. Because conventions, social institutions, are very valuable. Corresponding to the watch, there is the compass. And that also is a circle, divided 4 ways, north, south, east, and west. The Buddhists speak of 10 directions because they have not only the 8 points of the compass, but they add to that above and below. And in their mythology, they have guardian kings whose duty it is to guard the 10 directions. And you see them at the entrances to temples and places like that, all of fearsome aspect. The cosmic traffic cops, who are that fierce and are that firm about it all, because it is after all important that I can meet you at 4 o'clock in the afternoon at the corner of 42nd Street and 5th Avenue. Because if we couldn't make that sort of agreement, that sort of convention, we couldn't convene. And insofar as it is important to us to meet, we require these sorts of compasses and timers in the vast emptiness of the cosmos.
We use words like now, but it's a useless word because every time you say it, it means something different. Can you tell me the time? Well, which time did you want, now? Or the time you asked me? Or how about now? Is this the time you want? Speak up, this stuff isn't standing still. And think of the phrase, just now. Did you hear that? What? Just now. You mean just then? Yes, just then. Wait, there it is again. When? Just now. Everything we think of as now is either the very recent past or the very near future. There's no present. Welcome to the present. Shoot. Gone again. It's all so imprecise that people sometimes don't bother with minutes and hours at all. They keep things purposely vague. What time you got? I got just after. Just after? Gee, my watch is slow. I got going on. It's amazing how something as precisely calibrated as time can be described so loosely, especially where short periods of time are concerned. We say at once, immediately, right away, just like that, no time at all, nothing flat, at a moment's notice. And one that I never understood, before you can say Jack Robinson. You don't hear that much anymore, do you? Maybe Jack ran out of time. Maybe he was an Aztec. So when are we? Sometimes we think we know where we are, but we really don't know when we are. For all we know, it could be the middle of last week. And the time zones are no help. They're all different. In fact, in parts of India, the time zones actually operate on the half hour instead of the hour. What is that all about? Does anyone really know what time it is? And never mind a piddly little half-hour difference in India. How about thousands of years? The major calendars disagree by thousands of years. To the Chinese, this is, 4699. The Hebrews think it's 5762. The Muslims swear it's 1422. No telling what the Mayans and Aztecs would say if they were still around. I guess their time ran out. Remember, folks, these are calendars we're talking about. Instruments specifically designed to keep track of time. And they're all different. And they're not just off by a couple of weeks. This is thousands of goddamn years we're talking about. How did that happen? Our current Gregorian calendar is such an amateur show that every 4 years we have to cram in an extra day just to make the whole thing work. We call it February 29th. Personally, I don't believe it. Deep down, I know it's really March 1st. I mean, it just feels like March 1st, doesn't it? But even that simple quadrennial adjustment doesn't fix things, so every 100 years we suspend that rule and dispense with the extra day. Unless, of course, the year is divisible by 400, in which case we suspend the suspension and add the extra day. But that's still not quite enough, so every 4,000 years we suspend that rule too, and back comes February 29th. Here's how we got to this sorry state. The Julian calendar was introduced in 46 BC, the Roman year 709, but it was off by 11 minutes a year. So by 1582, there was an accumulated error of 10 days. Accordingly, that year, Pope Gregory XIII decided that the day following October 4th would be called October 15th. They just skipped 10 days, threw them out. Officially, in 1582, no one was born in France, Italy, Spain, or Portugal during the period October 5th through October 14th. Weird, eh? But even weirder, Britain didn't adopt the Gregorian calendar till 1752 when they dropped 11 days out of September. Since this also applied to the American colonies, officially no one was born here from September 3rd through September 13th, 1752, except Indians. By the way, that was the same year New Year's Day was moved from March 25th to January 1st. The way it had been handled before, for example, was that March 24th, 1750, would be followed by March 25th, 1751. Pretty fucked up, huh? And you thought that big millennium party you went to was being held right on time.
Now is the time. Seize the day!
let us face, without panic, the reality of our times.
What if I could go to another time?
There's this guy. He's called Ranger Dave. He's got a radio show on Skywater Radio.
You don't have to wear a clock around your neck to know what time it is at...
You know what bothers me? People who want to know the time. The ones who come up and say to me, "What time is it?" As if I personally were responsible for keeping track of such things. Sometimes they'll phrase it a little differently. They'll say, "Do you have the time?" And I say, "No, I don't believe I do. I certainly didn't have it this morning when I left the house. Could you possibly have left it somewhere?" You know, now that you mention it, I believe the Navy has the time in Washington. They keep it in an observatory or something. And they just let a little of it out each day. Not too much, of course. Just enough. They wouldn't want to give us too much time. We might not use it wisely. Sometimes in a playful mood when asked if I have the time, I'll say yes and simply walk away. I do that because I hate to disappoint people. You see, there is no time. There's just no time. I don't mean we're late, there's no time. I mean there is no time. After all, when is it? Do you know? No one really knows when it is. We made the whole thing up. It's a human invention. There are no numbers in the sky. Believe me, I've looked. They're not there. We made the whole thing up.
When it's infinite o'clock. Where all the edges fray, you say, and everyone will wonder why. Why? You lost a day the other day, Thursday, and now you're looking deep inside. I can see you. The bottoms of her shining eyes. That sparkle now, the God knows where. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Green light. The limits of her pure surprise. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Red light. You hear the tick-tock in your mind. Run, Jimmy, like hammer blows across whatever's left behind. And someone takes you by the hand. Beyond the quick and slow, toward places you have never been. I've never been here before. To places you would never go. Where are we? You know? And here where crystals crystallize. Science 102. And split the fractionating light. You make up signs, you lift up high. I pledge that no one sees. It's dark. It's night. What time is it? You click the switch high up the wall and watch the chandelier break loose and fall slow motion down. The sliding sides of Taj Mahal. Welcome. Where moonlit swirls curl and cue on top of mirror water outside of you. Mercury. And look, the towers loom below the clouds. Sultan's turret. that's scudding by cry out aloud for rain to fall like salty tears. That time of year. Now down the furrowed cheeks of all who left her here. The bulldog sounds mercy. The lady from some other place. What was her name? Helen. I know her face. Thy beauty is to me. She told me once. Like those. I don't know when. The sea barks. That all that was will be again. Softly. That you'll go down as quick as eyes can blink. See. A miracle in the skies, I think. The weary, way-worn traveler. As quick as eyes can blink. To his own native shore. She told me once, I don't know when. Glory was Greece. That all that was will be again. Glory was Greece. The grandeur that was Rome.
And let's not forget a jiffy or a flash. Do you know which is quicker? Well, I looked it up. In fact, there are 2 jiffies in a flash, and there are 6 flashes in the twinkling of an eye. No one seems to know how many twinklings of an eye there are in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. And by the way, why is it 2 shakes of a lamb's tail? Wouldn't the basic unit of measurement be 1 shake of a lamb's tail? Another vague word is soon. For me, soon has an emotional quality. It has great potential for sadness. Is Daddy ever coming to visit us again? Yes, dear. When? Soon. Here's a spooky one. Sooner than you think. Wow. Sooner than I think. That's like before you know it. I'll be back before you know it. Holy shit, he did it. Sooner or later, one of these days, any day now, from time to time, every now and then, a little while. A little while is nice. So gentle. I'll be home in a little while. That wouldn't bother you, would it? I think anyone could wait a little while. It doesn't sound too threatening. Your father is sick, but he still has a little while. That's different from a short time, isn't it? A short time sounds terminal. Your father has only a short time. If I were about to be executed, I'd much rather have a little while than a short time.
My time is worth $17 a second. I want an explanation, and I want it to cost less than $1,500. Go.
Oh. We try hard to keep track of time, but it's futile. You can't pin it down. For example, there's a moment coming. It's not here yet. It's still in the future. It's on the way. It hasn't arrived. It's getting closer. Here it is. Shit, it's gone.
This is Atlan Internet Radio.
It's the Ranger Dave Show. This show is a celebration of sound, busting free from the rules of convention and mediocrity. From a mighty mountain somewhere on the west coast of North America, and broadcasting out to the world from within its humble lair, our fearless hero delivers a musical brew, sizzling up from his brain pan, as would a giant human jukebox. Ranger Dave strives to fill the world with healing vibes through selected tunology.
Space, the final frontier.
What is space? How that relates to atmospheric density and the accepted boundary of where space starts. Space is pretty empty. We need a point where the atmosphere becomes unusable and we can say that we're in space. And this is the Kármán line. At the Kármán line, we can't use the atmosphere to make airplanes work. At this line, about 100 kilometers above sea level, there is not enough atmospheric density to distinguish between winged flight and a rocket escaping the Earth. I hope you've learned something about where space begins and the Earth's atmosphere ends.
Today's announcement sends a clear signal to the world that we are restoring America's proud legacy of leadership in space. At some point in the future, we'll look back and say, how did we do it without space?
Valued listener, this is Ranger Dave broadcasting from my mountain retreat. We're doing a show about space. What is space? Space is a continuous area, an expanse, an area that's unoccupied. It's available, like room. There's capacity in that room. It's an area in that room. It's an open expanse in that room. So that's one idea. The space between things. Dimensions, height, depth, width, all those things that indicate a potential. That's what space can be, a potential. As a verb, it means like when you space something, when you position something. And as an informal thing, let's just say that, we've all been spaced from time to time for various reasons, have we not? This is a show about space, and I'm Ranger Dave.
Aliens from the 8th dimension. I'm seeing them now.
You can see them now? Here?
Yeah, the three jerks driving this van. Look at this. What is this?
Alien beings from a dying planet. Their destination, the Earth. Their purpose, to make it their world.
Space. We're all taking up space. Everybody. Everything is taking up space. Everything we know, anyway. And of course, there's space out there. So we're going to cover both ends of it tonight. War, pestilence, famine. All the really terrible things in the world are caused by space, or room, or lack of it. And the fact that we're large and we consume many, many things in our lifetime, we require space. Ancient civilizations had no concept of property. They didn't mark out things the way that we do. If we see some space, we have to grid it off and then start selling it to each other. People that don't do that don't get to keep their space, apparently. And when it comes to space out there, well, there's all kinds of theories. Did or did we not go to the moon? And I've heard this talked about many different times, and I've seen all kinds of evidence. Some people think the world is flat, and that's the space we're living in, and space itself is just an illusion. I mean, space out there, outer space, that which is beyond the Van Allen belt. And of course, it leads to all kinds of speculation. People start wondering what's out in that space. Who is out in that space? Where is that space? How much of that space is there? Then, of course, there's inner space. There's what's going on inside of you. Not just physically, but spiritually and mentally.
I've been coming out to this landing site every day for 2 years to measure it. And here's the thing. The circumference and the diameter change by a few inches, yet the radius remains the same. Which brings me back to the number 5. There are 5 letters in the name Blaine. Mix the word Blaine up, mix it around. Eventually, you'll get Nabali. Nabali, the name of the planet in a galaxy way, way, way far away. I'll tell you another thing. Once you step inside this circle, the weather never changes. It is always 67 degrees with a 40% chance of rain. Always.
Request position reports on Venus probe satellites 1 and 4.
This is Tracking Unit 6-4. Position reports for Venus probes not ready for 30 minutes.
This is Space Center. Roger. We'll stand by on channel 422.
Look at this, dude, over here. Let me show you something really cool. This is a meteor from space.
What the fuck is that, the meteor?
Dude, all I can say to you is that how many meteors have you seen today from space?
That's unbelievable. That was flying around in space.
It really was. And the thing is, you know, we paid a little extra for it. We paid like $1 million, right, honey? We paid $1 million.
$1 million bucks?
It's really not much after the song Youth Gone Wild. But the thing is that I could have got a meteor for like 60 grand.
Yeah.
This was $1 million, though. Because this meteor comes from a part of space that's harder to get to than the other parts of space.
I do not like the men on this spaceship. They are uncouth and fail to appreciate my better qualities. I have something of value to contribute to this mission if they would only recognize it.
I've been stuffed in your pocket for the...
This is Atlin Internet Radio.
That's right, we bad. That's right.
If you got a radio in your shed or cave, you be listening to Ranger Dave.
Hi everyone, this is Ranger Dave. When I was a young boy, I guess around 9 or 10 years old, I had a next door neighbor, and his name was Cyril. And Cyril taught me about infinity. He told me that there was no end to infinity. And I said, okay, so when you get to the end of the universe, what do you find? He says, there is no end. I said, what do you mean there is no end? There's a beginning and an end to everything. He said, no, infinite means there's no end. Let's explore what that means on tonight's show. Tonight's show is about infinity.
The question of whether the universe is infinite or not, it used to be phrased as a question of, let's look at the universe right now and think about how far does space go, okay? And, it's probably not going to end somewhere where, you fall off into nothingness. But one thing that it could do is it could sort of close back in on itself like the surface of the Earth, except without the interior of the Earth. You have to think that away. But it could be finite in that sense, or it just could keep on going forever. Now, that is a very hard question to decide. We could have gotten lucky if the universe is small enough that you could see light going once around that surface. Then you could really detect that it's finite. But the universe is only 13 billion years old. Light could only have gotten that far since the Big Bang, and so it could be finite spatially, but we just wouldn't know about it because we haven't seen, it's just like somebody who, like Kant, who never traveled outside his hometown. He has no idea that the world is actually finite. It could be going on forever. Who knows?
Alive.
Now here's a painting of a landscape. Now the artist who painted that picture says something is missing. What is it? It is I myself who was part of the landscape I painted. So he mentally takes a step backward or regresses. and paints a picture of the artist painting a picture of the landscape. But still something is missing, and that something is still his real self painting the second picture. So he regresses further and paints a third, a picture of the artist painting a picture of the artist painting a picture of the landscape. But because something is still missing, he paints a fourth and a fifth until he paints a picture of the artist painting 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 a landscape.
So infinite regression then is...
It is the moment when our artist has regressed to the point of infinity and himself becomes part of the landscape he painted and is both the observer and the observed.
Well, now in that peculiar condition, what would he be observing if he were observing, let's say, time?
He would perceive, Mr. Bonds, that time is like a freeway with an infinite number of lanes.
In an infinite universe with infinite possibilities, it must be true that a finite universe can exist.
It may look like there are infinitely many angels or devils. Think of them as different regions in the universe, and you want to predict, if you open your eyes, where do you find yourself, in a black or in a white region? Well, there are infinitely many of both. It doesn't make sense to say it's a half-half chance, because I can reorder these angels and devils so that there's still infinitely many, but it makes it look like there are far more angels and so on. So I can always reorder this. In this universe, there are infinitely many places where you win the lottery. And of course, infinitely many places where you don't. And on what basis then do we predict that you probably aren't going to win the lottery?
Aristotle realizes that with actual infinities, we are in deep doo-doo. Basically, physics is not going to work well. So what he decides is that there exist no actual infinites. We have to banish that concept from the physical world if we're going to do good science. So he says it's fine that we can have a potential infinite, it just can't ever be actual. So for example, the potential infinite is start counting upward. You go as long as you want to, but in a finite period of time, you'll only make it a finite distance. The world is only a finite number of years old, he said. Therefore, there are no actual infinites. Take a quantity and start dividing. You can divide it as much as you want to, but at some point you'll run out of time, as I'm about to, and you have to stop.
I remember a time when I was really smoking a lot of hash, and I didn't like to run out of it, and I didn't have a lot of money. So I came up with this idea. If I only ever smoked half of what I had, I would always have something. Of course, eventually, I ran out. It was based on sound philosophical principles laid down by Zeno, but I ran out anyway. So much for infinity.
Anaximander had introduced the concept a few years earlier of the boundless, apeiron, the thing that's without limits, a scary kind of notion that the Greeks really disliked. You can't build a Parthenon with the boundless, right? Zeno found that whenever he introduced real infinites into the world, he ran into paradoxes. So let's take the fastest Greek of all, Achilles, and let's set him in a foot race against a tortoise, right? Can we give the tortoise a head start? Is that all right? Right. So the tortoise is out there in front. An hour later, he's made 100 feet, right? And then here goes Achilles. Zeno says, well, he's got to go halfway to the tortoise first. And then he's got to go halfway between there and the tortoise. And then he's got to go halfway. You get the point? Achilles, Zeno argued, could never pass the tortoise if infinites are real, because he always has to transverse half the distance and half the distance ad infinitum, right, to the end. So the infinite and paradox are linked from the very beginning.
Fibonacci is an Italian mathematician in the 13th century. If you divide 144 into 233, the result approaches theta.
Theta?
Theta. The Greek symbol for golden ratio, golden spiral.
Wow. I never saw that before.
I was continuing to shrink, to become what? The infinitesimal? What was I? Still a human being? Or was I the man of the future? If there were other bursts of radiation, other clouds drifting across seas and continents, would other beings follow me into this vast new world? So close, the infinitesimal and the infinite. But suddenly I knew they were really the two ends of the same concept. The unbelievably small and the unbelievably vast eventually meet, like the closing of a gigantic circle. I looked up, as if somehow I would grasp the heavens, the universe, worlds beyond number, God's silver tapestry spread across the night. And in that moment, I knew the answer to the riddle of the infinite. I had thought in terms of man's own limited dimension. I had presumed upon nature that existence begins and ends is man's conception, not nature's. And I felt my body dwindling, melting, becoming nothing. My fears melted away, and in their place came acceptance. All this vast majesty of creation, it had to mean something. And then I meant something too. Yes, smaller than the smallest. I meant something too. To God, there is no zero. I still exist.
Le programme, c'est fini. In toto. Kaput.